Throwaway account here because a few people from work follow my main and I don't want them anywhere near this mess. I'm Ryan, 35M, and I've been married to Amelia, 33F, for almost 8 years. On paper, we were the couple people envied: tidy little house on a quiet street, a rescue dog who worshipped us, weekend coffee rituals, and a habit of finishing each other's sentences. I thought we'd cracked the code: no drama, just a calm, steady life. Looking back, I see how much I relied on that stability. I liked coming home to the smell of her candles, or the way she hummed off-key while stacking dishes in the dishwasher. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or so I believed. It started subtly. Amelia began throwing barbed jokes about me being predictable or old before my time. At first, I laughed with her, but over weeks they sharpened into something colder. She'd sigh when I asked about her day, as if I were an interruption instead of her husband. I caught her staring at herself in the mirror, twisting her hair like she was debating who she even wanted to be. Then she announced, out of the blue, that she'd enrolled in a weekend photography class. "I just need a creative outlet," she said, brushing off my offer to join her or at least drive her there. She made it sound harmless, even inspiring, but something in her voice felt rehearsed. From there, the pattern changed. She started staying late after class to edit photos with classmates I never met. Wine nights popped up with friends I'd never heard of, always on nights I worked late or had early meetings. Her phone, once left charging on the kitchen counter, became an extra limb. She guarded it, screen down, sometimes taking calls on the back porch in a hushed tone, claiming it was just Maya venting about her boyfriend. When I teased her about being glued to her phone, she gave me this smirk, not playful, not loving, but sly, and said, "Don't be so jealous, Ryan. Maybe you should get a hobby." I wanted to believe this was just Amelia hitting a restless patch, like people do in long marriages. But deep down, I felt an unease I couldn't name, as if the walls of our quiet life had started to bend. Something in her was slipping away from me, and I was starting to suspect she didn't want me to catch it. That was before I knew how far she'd already gone. I didn't go hunting for proof. At first, I didn't even want to believe there was proof. But the signs kept piling up, and each one felt like a pebble in my shoe, small, but impossible to ignore. It started with a smell. One Sunday morning, Amelia came home from editing photos with classmates, smelling faintly of cedar and merlot. Not coffee or the lavender lotion she usually wore, cedar. I told myself it was from the cafe's wooden tables or someone else's cologne. Still, it clung to her sweater, sharp and unfamiliar. Then there were her absences. She began leaving the house dressed a little too carefully for casual drinks with the girls. Tight jeans, red lipstick she'd stopped wearing for me years ago, hair styled like she was going somewhere that mattered. When I'd ask who she was meeting, she'd throw out random names: Kelly, Sarah, that friend from yoga, like she was spinning a wheel and picking whatever came up. The real crack opened one Thursday night. She claimed she was out with Sophie, a college friend she swore I'd met. I hadn't. Around 9:30, I texted to ask if she needed a ride home because the weather was turning ugly. She didn't answer. Half an hour later, still nothing. My stomach sank. I pulled up our Find My app, the one we'd set up ages ago for emergencies. Her location wasn't at any bar or restaurant, it was in a loft across town, an area full of artist studios. A pin hovered over a building I'd never seen before. Something in me snapped then. I grabbed my jacket and keys, rain hammering against the windshield as I drove. The building was quiet, amber light spilling from a third-floor window. I saw a shadow move inside, tall and lean, followed by Amelia's laugh, muffled but unmistakable. I didn't knock. I didn't want to see more than I already had. I sat in my car until my hands stopped shaking, then drove home in silence, headlights cutting through the storm while my thoughts spun darker than the sky. That was the night I stopped pretending everything was fine. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling while Amelia slipped into bed around 2 a.m. smelling faintly of wine and cedarwood. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, curled away from me, and was asleep within minutes. Meanwhile, my head was a hurricane. The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep pretending. Over coffee, I asked, as calmly as I could, "So, how was Sophie last night?" Her eyes flicked up, sharp for just a second before she put on a lazy smile. "Oh, you know, same old Sophie, we split a bottle of Pinot and complained about men." "Why?" I mentioned the loft. I told her I'd driven by after getting worried about the storm. The color drained from her face, but she recovered fast, leaning back with crossed arms. "You followed me? Are you seriously stalking your own wife?" "Ryan, that's pathetic." I kept my voice steady, though my pulse was roaring. "I saw someone with you, Amelia. A guy. Don't lie to me." She scoffed. "That's Julian. He's just helping me with my photography portfolio." "God, you always assume the worst." Then she launched into a performance about how I never support her passions, how I was so insecure that she couldn't have male friends. When I pressed harder, she changed tactics. Tears. "I can't believe you don't trust me," she whispered, burying her face in her hands. "Do you have any idea how trapped I feel? I needed space to breathe, and now you're interrogating me." I wanted to believe her, but her story had holes you could drive a truck through. Why the secrecy, the 2 a.m. return, the scent of wine and cedar still clinging to her skin. She slammed her mug down, stormed off to the bedroom, and slammed that door too, leaving me alone at the table with my untouched coffee and a gut-deep certainty, I'd only scratched the surface of whatever was really going on. The house felt different after that fight, like someone had sucked all the oxygen out of it. Even the dog seemed confused, following me from room to room while Amelia stomped around upstairs, occasionally slamming a drawer for emphasis. I kept replaying every word she'd said. The way she'd spun everything back on me, made me feel guilty for asking questions. She was good at it, too good. For years I'd trusted her completely, and now I couldn't tell if anything she said was real or just another story. That night I tried to sit next to her on the couch, to at least talk like adults. She didn't even look up from her phone. When I asked who she was texting, she snorted and said, "God, Ryan, not everything is a conspiracy." She turned the screen away, muttering something about work stuff, though she'd left her job 2 months ago to focus on photography. I felt like I was losing my grip on what our marriage even was. I'd built my whole sense of safety on the idea that Amelia was solid, a partner I could trust. Now every glance, every half-smile, every new excuse made my stomach twist. Worse than the anger was the sadness creeping in behind it. I kept thinking about all the nights I'd stayed late at work to give her space, all the weekends I'd spent fixing little things around the house so she'd have one less thing to worry about. Meanwhile, she was out there, laughing, drinking, living, with someone else. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. She'd made me feel small in my own home, like a clueless extra in a life she'd already rewritten without me. And for the first time since I'd married her, I wondered if I'd been loving a version of Amelia that didn't exist anymore, or maybe never had. After that night, I couldn't unsee the cracks. Every little thing Amelia did looked like evidence now, and I hated that feeling, like I was turning into a detective in my own marriage. But I also knew I couldn't keep letting her gaslight me. I started paying attention. Her phone stayed on silent, always face down, and she'd scoop it up the second I walked by. She'd step out on the porch to take a call, voice dropping to a whisper I could barely catch through the glass. Once, I heard her laugh, not the polite chuckle she gave me lately, but a low, warm laugh I hadn't heard in years. I checked our shared calendar. Her photo club meetings had doubled, always at odd hours. One entry just said J session, 8:30 p.m. When I asked about it, she waved me off, just a classmate helping me with lighting setups. Then came the receipt. It was in her coat pocket when I grabbed it to hang on the hook, a wine bar receipt from the same night she swore she was at Sophie's. 2 glasses of Merlot, charcuterie for 2, and a note scribbled at the bottom, "Loved tonight. J." I wanted to confront her right then, but something in me hesitated. Instead, I took a photo of the receipt and tucked it back. I needed more than one slip of paper before she could twist this back on me again. The next week, she said she was staying late to print photos at a studio downtown. I waited an hour, then drove there. From across the street I saw her, hair down, laughing, leaning too close to a tall guy with charcoal eyes. They were loading a camera bag into his car like they'd done it 100 times before. Watching them, a weird calm settled over me. There it was, the truth I'd been trying not to name. The life she'd been building behind my back wasn't a figment of my paranoia, it was right there, under a streetlight, smiling at her like I never could. I drove home in silence, gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white, knowing the next step was coming, and that I wasn't ready for how ugly it might get. I woke up with that strange, brittle calm you get after a night of shaking. I told myself I'd keep it together, make breakfast, act normal, gather more facts. The universe laughed. At 8:12 a.m., the kitchen iPad, the one we've always used for recipes and grocery lists, pinged. I wasn't snooping, it just lit up on the counter while I was pouring coffee. A message preview slid across the screen from a contact saved as J. Still tasting your lip print on my glass. Same time tonight? I'll put on the cedar oil you like. A photo followed, not explicit, but intimate, the curve of Amelia's neck with her camera strap trailing down like a ribbon, a smear of red lipstick on a wine glass. My hands went cold around the mug. I tapped the thread. Before anyone accuses me of hacking, it's our shared iCloud. The iPad has mirrored messages since forever. We set it up together. The conversation went back weeks. Little, inside jokes about blue hours that clearly weren't about sunsets. Her telling him, "Don't worry, he's helplessly beige. He'll get over it." Him calling her, "my comrade in light." Who even talks like that? I put the iPad down like it might explode. At 8:23, Amelia breezed in from a morning walk, cheeks flushed, scarf smelling like the same cedar that's been haunting my house. She saw my face, saw the iPad, and went still, eyes flat, calculating. "Want to explain this?" I asked. I kept my voice even. "Small victory." Her chin lifted. "Wow. So you're spying on me now?" No guilt. Just irritation, like I'd left wet towels on the bed. It popped up on the iPad. "You know it's synced." She rolled her eyes. "God, Ryan. It's performance art. We're workshopping a photo essay about intimacy and surveillance. Those messages are prompts." I just stared. Prompts with lipstick on a wine glass and calendar invites to his loft. She changed lanes without signaling. "You're so literal. This is why I don't tell you anything, you make everything into a courtroom." I showed her the hotel charge that had just come in as a fraud alert while she was talking, Lantern House Boutique, 1 night, 2 drinks at the bar. "We share a credit card for groceries," their system had texted me. Her eyes flicked to the notification and back. "That was for a gallery talk," she said instantly. "We rented a room to stage a set. You wouldn't understand. Creative people do immersive work. Creative people also pay cash when they're cheating," I said, sharper than I meant to. She laughed, a small, contemptuous sound. "There it is. The C word. You love playing the victim, don't you?" Before I could answer, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I picked up on instinct. "Hello? Ryan? It's Sophie." The name hit me like a slap, Amelia's supposed drinking buddy. "Sorry to call out of the blue. A mutual friend said you've been asking if I've seen Amelia." "I haven't, not since New Year's. Everything okay? I put her on speaker. Amelia? Anything you want to say to Sophie? Amelia bristled. Hang up. This is invasive. Hi, Sophie, I said, ignoring Amelia. Amelia said you two are out for wine every Thursday. Silence. Then Sophie, no. Definitely not me. Amelia lunged to end the call. I stepped back. We're done here, she snapped. You're humiliating both of us. Sophie changes numbers all the time. Sophie texted me seconds later, that woman is lying to you. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I didn't have a response left in me. Enough, I said. I saw you with him. I saw the loft. I have the receipt. I just listened to you invent 3 different realities. Pick one and stick with it. Her eyes sharpened. Fine. You want the truth. She gestured toward the door like she was on stage. Julian is a better listener than you. He actually believes in my work. You've been a ghost in this marriage for years. Did you sleep with him? She smiled, not shy, not apologetic. Mean. Do you need to picture it to feel something? I don't remember moving, but I was suddenly standing very still, like if I breathed too hard, everything would shatter and slice me open. Yes or no? A knock at the door. Because of course. Amelia flinched, then recovered. Don't. I opened it. Julian stood there holding one of Amelia's scarves and a camera lens, the world's worst welcome basket. Up close, he looked exactly like the text thread sounded, careful stubble, cologne like a wooden box, the smug calm of a man who thinks he's the protagonist. His eyes went wide when he saw me. Amelia left these, he said, like we were neighbors swapping Tupperware. I thought. You've met my husband, Amelia cut in, sharp. He was just leaving for work. I'm not leaving, I said. You are. Julian hovered at the threshold, confused, then defaulted to gentleman mode. Maybe I should. I held his gaze. Have you kissed my wife? Ryan, stop, Amelia snapped. This is grotesque. He looked at her, then back at me. We crossed lines, he said finally, careful. I'm sorry if. Amelia barked out a laugh. Oh, don't get sanctimonious now. You're the one who said marriages are prisons. Color crept up his neck. I never said. You did, she shot back. You said routine calcifies desire. They were arguing over vocabulary while my marriage bled out on the doormat. I stepped between them. Get off my porch, I told him. We'll deal with the rest later. He held up his hands, set the scarf and lens on the bench, and left without meeting my eyes again. The cedar smell trailed after him like a signature. When I closed the door, Amelia went from icy to explosive in one breath. You are deranged. You humiliated me in front of him. You made me look needy. You are needy, I said, voice shaking now. Needy for attention, for drama, for someone to blame when your life feels ordinary. I offered you therapy. I offered you weekends away. I offered to learn photography with you. You wanted a stage. She crossed her arms, chin up. I wanted a partner who doesn't fold his socks like a 68-year-old insurance adjuster. Cool, I said, numb. So you torched your vows because my sock folding lacked whimsy. She went for the kill. You're making me the villain because you're boring, Ryan. Something in me finally clicked into place. Not rage, gravity. Here's what's going to happen, I said, surprising myself with how steady it came out. You will stop seeing Julian. You will hand me your phone and iPad and let me read every message from the last 3 months. You will come to counseling. Or you will pack a bag, and I'll pack mine, and we will call this what it is. She stared, weighing which performance to choose. Then she smirked, pure, practiced cruelty. No. I'm not submitting to a strip search because you can't handle a complex woman. I nodded once. Then we're done. She blinked. I don't think she expected me to say it out loud. You're being dramatic, she scoffed, but there was a tremor under it now. You'll cool off. I'm past boiling, I said. I'm ash. I went to the bedroom and pulled a duffel from the closet. She followed, sniping as I packed, you'll regret this. Everyone leaves you eventually. You're not strong enough to be alone. Every line designed to snag on an old insecurity. I folded a sweatshirt, placed it in the bag, and refused to hang my self-worth on her hooks anymore. On my way out, I clipped the dog's leash to his collar. She scoffed. You're taking him? Seriously? He's coming with me tonight, I said. You can see him tomorrow. At the door, she tried one last rewrite. For the record, nothing actually happened. I looked at the scarf on the bench, the iPad chiming again with Jay, thinking of the way you leaned into me last night. I looked at her, the woman who used to hum while loading the dishwasher, who now smiled like a knife. Something happened, I said. And it wasn't just a kiss. Out in the car, my hands finally started shaking again. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel and let 3 breaths turn into 10. The dog whined softly and put his head on my knee, the only uncomplicated love in the whole story. I drove to a friend's place and texted Amelia one line before putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. Counseling tomorrow at 3. If you don't show, I'll call a lawyer on Monday. Her reply came fast, full of fire and spin and blame. I didn't read it. Not because I was trying to be noble, but because I understood something I should have understood months ago. If I kept letting her voice define the narrative, I'd never hear my own again. I sat in my friend Nate's driveway for a good 15 minutes before I even rang the bell. The rain had started again, smearing streetlights into long streaks across the windshield. The dog whined softly in the back seat, like he could feel the static buzzing inside me. Nate opened the door in sweatpants, mid-video game. He took one look at my face, stepped aside, and said, "Guest room's clean." No questions, no commentary, just a quiet kindness I hadn't realized I needed. Inside, I set my bag down and finally exhaled. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I'd walked out of my own house, left my wife standing there with a scarf from her lover and an iPad full of evidence, and somehow the hardest part was over. The silence in Nate's spare room felt alien but safe, like a cabin after a storm. Lying on the unfamiliar bed, I scrolled through the messages again, not because I wanted to torture myself, but because I needed to be sure I wasn't crazy. The words were unambiguous: plans, inside jokes, hotel reservation. Little snapshots of a world I was never supposed to see. There was no creative project. There was no innocent muse. Around 1 a.m., Amelia started calling. First one ring, then 3, then a barrage of texts. You overreacted. We need to talk. I didn't mean for you to see that. If you walk away now, you'll ruin everything we've built. By the 5th message, she'd shifted tone entirely. You're really going to abandon me when I'm this vulnerable? That one almost hooked me. Almost. But then I remembered the look she'd given Julian on the porch, that sly, possessive flicker that wasn't about art or loneliness. It was about ownership, about testing how far she could push a boundary. I put the phone face down and let the room stay dark. The next morning, I woke to sunlight and the smell of Nate brewing coffee downstairs. For a split second, I forgot why I was there. Then it hit like a wave: my marriage had tipped over the edge, and I was standing on dry land while the wreckage floated away. I didn't rush back to her. I didn't answer the texts piling up. I just sat on the porch with my coffee, the dog's head resting against my leg, and thought about how much of myself I'd been spending trying to keep Amelia's chaos contained. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt the tiniest sliver of calm, fragile, but mine. By late afternoon I knew hiding at Nate's wasn't enough, I needed to face Amelia on my own terms. I drove back to the house with a notepad, a list of what I needed to say, and a shaky resolve. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, scrolling on her phone like the night before hadn't happened. The scarf Julian had returned was draped over a chair. She looked up, gave a small shrug. "So, you're back." "Not to stay," I said. "To talk." Her smile flickered, then hardened. "If you came to rehash last night, don't. I've had a migraine all day." I set the notepad on the counter. "No more spinning, Amelia. We're going to lay this out. Either we fix this or we end it, but I won't live in a fog of half-truths." She sighed, loud, theatrical, and leaned against the counter. "Fine. Go ahead, Mr. Prosecutor." I read from the page, voice steadier than I felt. "You lied about Sophie. You lied about wine nights. You lied about hotel charges and loft studios. I have screenshots, receipts, and your boyfriend showing up at my door." Her face barely moved, but her knuckles whitened on the edge of the counter. "Julian isn't my boyfriend," she said finally. "He's complicated." "Complicated doesn't show up with your scarf and a camera lens at midnight," I replied. "Complicated doesn't send you texts about the way you lean into him." She looked past me, out the window, jaw tight. "You don't get it. Julian makes me feel alive. You make me feel boxed in." That hurt more than any admission. I felt something settle in my chest, not anger, but clarity. "I'm not your jailer, Amelia. I've bent myself in knots trying to make you happy. If you wanted more, you could have told me. Instead, you chose to humiliate me in my own home." She finally turned, eyes glinting with something sharp. "Maybe I needed a reason to leave," she said, almost whispering. "Maybe I didn't want to be the bad guy." There it was. No grand apology, no misunderstanding to clear up. Just a quiet confession wrapped in selfishness. I closed the notepad, slid it into my jacket pocket, and spoke as evenly as I could. "Then here's the line. Either you end whatever's going on with Julian and come to counseling with me, or we start talking divorce lawyers. Today." She stared, testing me. For once, I didn't flinch. "Fine," she said after a long pause. "I'll think about it." I nodded. "You have until tomorrow." After that, I moved forward alone. I left without waiting for her reply. Out in the car, I let the silence wrap around me like armor. For the first time, the path ahead, painful as it was, felt solid under my feet. I didn't sleep that night. Even with the dog curled against my feet at Nate's, my mind ran loops of every word Amelia had said, boxed in, alive. Maybe I needed a reason to leave. The sentences played like shards of glass tumbling in a dryer. By morning, my phone was buzzing with her messages. At first they were short. "Can we talk? I didn't mean to hurt you." Then they grew frantic. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Julian isn't what you think. Please come home, I can't do this alone." I didn't reply. I needed space from her spinning. Around noon she called Nate's house phone, an old landline I'd forgotten he still had. I let it ring, then picked up only because I knew she wouldn't stop. Her voice was soft, almost tender. "Ryan, I don't want to lose us. Last night got out of hand." "It wasn't just last night," I said quietly. "It's been months of lies." She launched into another explanation, how Julian was just inspiration, how I'd grown dull, how she'd needed someone to see her. Every sentence was a boomerang, curving back to blame me. Finally I cut in. "Do you love him?" A long pause, the kind that drips like water torture. Then, "I don't know." That answer, not a no, not even an attempt at reassurance, was the final nail in something I hadn't admitted was already dead. I told her I'd come by later to collect a few more things, that we'd speak with a mediator about separating finances. She tried a last hook, her voice cracking just enough to sound real. "Ryan, don't throw away 8 years." "I'm not," I said. "You did." When I hung up, I felt gutted but strangely lighter. I wasn't fighting for a marriage anymore, I was fighting for my own sanity. That afternoon I met a lawyer recommended by a coworker. She listened without flinching, took notes, and outlined clear next steps: temporary separation agreement, property inventory, spousal mediation. Every paper she handed me was a tiny brick laid under my feet, proof that I wasn't powerless. Driving back to Nate's, I realized I hadn't thought about Julian once during the meeting. He was just a symptom. The real problem was Amelia's contempt, the quiet way she decided my loyalty was something she could exploit. I parked the car, rolled down the window, and let the dog stick his head out into the crisp evening air. For the first time in weeks, I felt the possibility of a future that wasn't tethered to her chaos. A week later I stood in what used to be our living room, sunlight slanting through the blinds onto half-packed boxes. Amelia sat on the couch, arms folded, eyes fixed on a spot over my shoulder. There were no more tears, no more elaborate stories, just a brittle calm that told me she already knew how this chapter would end. I placed my house key on the coffee table. "I've signed the separation papers," I said quietly. "You'll get your copy tomorrow." She looked at the key, then back at me. "You're really doing this?" "I have to," I replied. "We can't keep ripping each other apart just to pretend we're fine." For a moment something flickered across her face, regret, maybe, or just the shock of losing a safety net she'd taken for granted. She opened her mouth, then closed it, letting the silence settle between us. I bent to scratch the dog behind the ears. He leaned into my hand, tail wagging as if to remind me that some bonds remain steady even when everything else falls apart. I took one last look at the house, the photos on the walls, the couch where we'd once fallen asleep laughing, and walked out the door. Driving away, I expected to feel hollow, but what filled the car was relief. The fog of self-doubt, the weight of her lies, the way I'd bent myself to fit a version of marriage that no longer existed, all of it stayed behind in that quiet little house. Over the next few months, I started piecing together a life that felt like mine again. Therapy helped me unpack the guilt I'd been carrying, helped me see that leaving wasn't failure, it was refusing to live as a ghost in someone else's story. I hiked with the dog, reconnected with old friends, even dusted off the guitar I hadn't touched in years. Sometimes memories of her still surface, the way she hummed while loading the dishwasher, or how we'd once spent an entire rainy Saturday cooking pasta and dancing barefoot. But those moments don't undo the truth. She chose deception over honesty, and I chose to stop being collateral damage. If anyone reading this is where I was, wondering if you're overreacting to small signs, listen to your gut. Ask the hard questions. Don't let someone convince you that protecting your dignity makes you controlling or paranoid. Walking away was terrifying, but staying would have been worse. I may not know exactly what comes next, but I know this much: I'm free of the lies, and I finally trust myself again.